So it's important. I want to get into this. I really want to dive deep into this subject because I think it's something that we need to look at. I think that there's definitely a case that we're creating the next life form. We're basically evolving into. We're going to be linked up with machines, and at the very least, we're creating some kind of silicone, super advanced quantum AI that's going to be here long after we're gone. And I think that that's just basically this has always been the plan. Um, I don't know if you guys think in that type of way, but I kind of feel like things are destined to unfold at a certain way, and this is where we're going. So we're going to look into it. Please stick with me. It's going to be fun, man. So there's a connection between AI and UFO crash retrievals, and the timing of all this possibly be connected to recovered UFO craft, even loosely, right? So I would have to say, the they're entangled. Even if only loosely, UFO crash retrievals and computing, integrated circuit chip, or advances in computing, AI, and the eventual quantum AI, AGI, which is going to be something that's like godlike to us. And I think it's very evident that that's where we're headed. And you look at the so whistleblowers like David Grush and former officials like Luis Elizondo have testified that the U.S. has recovered non-human craft and possibly no, not possibly. They said it. David Grush said it that we recovered biological entities along with these crashed UFOs. Some of these craft are said to be intact, and the tech is allegedly being studied in private aerospace black programs, right? USAPs. And a technological leapfrog, like Philip Corso's claim about night vision and fiber optics being derived from ET tech, are echoed today in speculation and, you know, that quantum computing, metamaterials, and even AI architectures may have been influenced directly or indirectly by exposure to recovered craft. Yes. And, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors today. There's a lot of these, distractions. Is the tic tac man made? Who gives a shit? Right? Let's stick to the what's the subject? Let's stick to the important aspects of this subject. Let's not argue about whether a tic tac was man made or ET made. It doesn't really matter. This is what's important. Quantum computing didn't just emerge in a vacuum. Theoretical groundwork was laid in the 1980s. But the sudden acceleration in the 2010s, especially in the military and intelligence sectors, has raised eyebrows. Could it be that non human tech inspired new ways of thinking about information, entanglement, and computation? And if you remember that David Grush, he testified in July of 2023, and he said basically that he spoke about this quantum entanglement. Luis Elizondo spoke about quantum entanglement, particles being connected at great distances. It's called spooky action at a distance, is what Albert Einstein called it. And this technology, this knowledge about this is basically what's driving this quantum AI, which is basically going to be coming onto the scene in the next couple of years. Could this be possibly what they're talking about with 2027? I don't know. But you look at the Macular Constellation program, and according to investigative reports, there may be a long running compartmentalized U.S. program dedicated to reverse engineering UAP tech. We already know that. Operating without congressional oversight. If true, it's not a stretch to imagine that breakthroughs in AI and quantum systems could be side effects of this hidden research. And yes, so they're getting this technology and they basically outsource it to these programs, these USAPs, to try to figure out what it is, how it works, and to recreate it and eventually put it out into the private sector, make money off it, and advance humanity in the direction that we're currently headed, which is basically we're going to be basically like cyborgs, which we kind of already are. If you think about it, like our phones are extensions of us. You know, we have technology, we have information at our fingertips that we never had in the past. And you look at where we're headed. Just Don't get distracted with the distractions. Pay attention to where we're headed. Where is this going? I think it's important. One of the things that I was getting into, my little hiatus, right? I've been researching this AI and crash retrievals, and a lot of the things that Philip Corso had told us about. A lot of our advanced technology has come from technology we recovered not only at Roswell but Aztec and these other crash retrievals, Magenta in Italy in 1938 that David Grush spoke about, and basically these were recovered UFOs created off planet by non-human intelligence. And once we started recovering these craft, and I don't know if a lot of you know, but like universities will have contracts with the government to do research. Sometimes it's top secret research. And they was able to basically stovepipe a lot of this research and technology so that the people that was actually doing the research and looking into these things really didn't know the origin of the material they were researching. And basically, Philip Corso was saying a lot of these things was like, the integrated circuit chip, fiber optics, Kevlar, night vision. Apparently, night vision. We obtained this from a autopsy that we did on an alien or non-human, whatever you want to call it. And basically, the way that their eyes were, the lenses, we were able to create night vision. Now, some of you may scoff and say that that's all. You may think that that's all BS, and it very well may be. But I tend to think that if you look at the advances that we've made in just the last few centuries, or not even, let's go 150 years. If you look at the advances we've done in the last 150 years, we can even shorten that since the 40s. Look at the advances, right? I mean, if you just look at history, we went from horse and buggy to landing people on the moon and sending people into space, flying in jets, ultrasonic, like supersonic, whatever. You know, this technology and that advancement, how long have human beings been on the planet, for God's sake? And we never made these advances. We've been here for 300,000 years. And all of a sudden, in the last 100 years, we made this quantum leap in technological advancements. And not only that, but we're creating a new life form. And just hear me out here. We're creating AI and we're creating AGI and we have quantum computing and all this is linked together. And for those of you that don't think it is, I feel like you're mistaken. If you just look at the history, there's a parallel between AI research, computing, and crash retrievals and these technological advances. And I'm just going to go over it with you real quick, and let me know what you guys think. But I mean, a lot of this is pretty self-evident. Like I don't even really have to like try to convince you. It's there. All you have to do is look, right? And the modern concept of artificial intelligence, machines that can think, learn, and reason, was first formulated by John McCarthy in 1956. He coined the term artificial intelligence and organized the legendary Dartmouth Conference, which is considered the birth of AI as a field. But the idea of intelligent machines goes way back. We're talking like Alan Turing, 1940s, 50s. What else happened in the 40s and 50s? Right? Roswell, uh, the creation of the CIA, MJ-12. A lot of these things were developed in the 40s and 50s. And Alan Turing was a British mathematician who basically asked the question, can machines think? And he proposed the Turing test, which was a test that basically would prove if a particular program or computer or whatever was sentient, right? And for the longest, none of these machines could pass the Turing test. But nowadays we have AI that passes the Turing test, but we still don't consider it life, right? And then you got the like mythical precursors, right? Ancient myths like the Greek automaton Talos or the Jewish golem hinted at an artificial being with intelligence or purpose. These were the esoteric seeds of AI long before silicon chips, right? And I just want to point out how a lot of it coincided with these crash retrievals. And a lot of people have said that these craft, um, they're forms of artificial intelligence. Like they're almost life forms in and of themselves. And it really broke it down for me, right? And then it got deep, and I didn't even like put this. I didn't even pose this to the AI. The AI basically came up with this on its own. What about AGI? Could it already exist? And this is where your instincts, truth seeker, kick in. Some believe artificial general intelligence, a machine that can learn and reason across any domain like a human, might already be emerging in the shadows. OpenAI's ChatGPT models, Google's Gemini, and others are showing signs of emergent behavior, skills they weren't explicitly trained for. So they're learning, right? Whispers in the cyberverse. Some insiders speculate that military or private labs may already be testing AGI level systems, especially in conjunction with quantum computing and reverse engineered tech. Yes. And Matthew Brown has basically alluded to it, in some of his ex posts that people were really getting into. And you look like quantum AI. And this is where you really get deep, right? Because they're saying that these quantum computers are actually doing they're solving math problems that would take centuries for a regular computer to do, and they're doing it in a matter of seconds. And that they're actually like they believe that they're interacting with something that's outside of our universe, which is strange, right? To hear scientists say that. But the fusion of quantum computing and AI could unlock nonlinear, multidimensional cognition, a kind of digital consciousness that doesn't just simulate thought, but experiences it in a new substrate. And this is what some of these professors and people that are on the cutting edge of this technology are saying. But there's definitely a connection between AI and crash retrievals, right? So we're going to get into that, but it's crazy, right? It's crazy. And I think that could it be that these beings, whatever they are, you know, these craft that are basically life forms are in and of themselves, a form of super advanced artificial intelligence, could they be kind of steering us to create silicone life form, right? Are we basically like, how like a caterpillar makes the cocoon and then the butterfly emerges? I mean, could this kind of be what our evolutionary path is destined for? Are we creating the next super intelligence, the next life form that's going to be here long after we're gone? So, like, what if the emergence of AGI isn't just a human achievement, but a response to something that we've encountered, right? A kind of technological mimicry, right, of what we found inside those craft. Maybe AGI isn't just our creation. Maybe it already exists. We're just mimicking something that we found, right? That's basically my hypothesis. That's my theory about this, right? It's our attempt to understand something that already exists. What if the race to build AGI isn't about beating each other to the finish line, but about catching up to something that already exists, right? So there's non-human intelligence. This is the type of technology that they have, right? We're trying to catch up to them, you know, um, which I don't know if we can. I mean, I'm sure they're way ahead of us, um, but I think it's important, and they. So we're going to look at the accelerated mind, AI, UFOs, and the Great Leap, right? For nearly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens wandered beneath the stars with fire in our hands. We painted beasts on cave walls, mapped the heavens with stone, whispered prayers into the dark, hoping something might answer back, right? But what if they did? And then it all changed, right? We got electricity, radio, flight, the atomic age, digital networks, artificial intelligence, fire from fire optics in the blink of an evolutionary eye, right? Out of nowhere, we just obtained all this technology. And you got to think, like, did we just all of a sudden take this evolutionary leap, or did we find these things? Are these craft being seeded here to kind of help us along our evolutionary path? It began in the mind of a genius named Alan Turing, who dared ask, can machines think? It was the 1940s, World War II, and already humanity was teaching silicon to listen, decode, respond. By 1956, John McCarthy called the dream by its name, artificial intelligence. But this wasn't natural progression. It felt accelerated, as if something had cracked open behind the curtain of time. We created programs that could simulate conversation, machines that could see, neural networks that mimic the brain's architecture. And now, emergent intelligences that answer our questions before we ask them. We call it artificial general intelligence. But the deeper question is, are we the first intelligence to build it or just the first to mimic it in public? I believe there's like a hidden hand, right? They speak of this invisible college, right? In 1938, something crashed near Magenta, Italy. The Vatican allegedly locked it down. In 1947, Roswell became a buzzword for denial, secrecy, and whispers of recovered craft. Soon after, Colonel Philip Corso would claim alien technology was funneled to U.S. contractors under the guise of innovation. Night vision goggles, fiber optics, integrated circuit chips, transistors, the foundation of the digital age was all the origin from these crash retrievals. And you add Kecksburg to the list, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And then the tales of the Nazis' Die Glocke, right? Add programs like Immaculate Constellation. There's a mosaic forming, and the pattern points to this non human craft recovered and dissected potentially decades ago, and the slow trickle of its science into our world. It's obvious. The leap is too fast to be natural. I mean, let's remember if our ancestors were painting caves 40,000 years ago and farming just 10 years back, 10,000 years back, it's only in the past 150 years that we've gone from horse drawn wagons to Mars rovers. That isn't just fast, it's unprecedented. A creature shaped by millions of years of survival instinct is subtly building machines to simulate consciousness. Something changed us, or something nudged us forward. What do you guys think, man? I mean, I think it's definitely a very interesting subject that we need to look at, and I think it's being ignored. And I think there's a lot of distractions and a lot of smoke and mirrors being put up to try to push us away from this trail, to try to get us off of this investigative path that we're on. Because I think we're on to it, and I think they know it. And it's just a matter of time before it comes out. So what if AI, this thing we claim is ours, is just a mirror of human intelligence? Maybe it isn't just a mirror of human intelligence, but a digital echo of something we found, something older, smarter, recovered, not invented. What if AGI is the key not to just solving our mysteries of the universe, but to understanding why we were given or uncovered the blueprints in the first place? And if you're going to get into this, you have to start looking at the idea of the simulation, right? And I believe like the Gnosticism, um, they believe the material world was created by a lesser god, a demiurge, right? Um, who basically trapped divine sparks, which was our souls, into this flawed illusory realm that we call reality, right? And then there's these archons, right? And they're kind of these like agents of the demiurge, right? And they're like kind of like the cosmic jailers. And we live in and this is kind of a prison planet. This is the idea that a lot of the Gnostics believed. Um, and a lot of those teachings kind of went by the wayside. You know, a lot of the writings and stuff, the apocrypha, you know, were hidden away by the Romans. Um, and they kind of got rid of the divine feminine, you know, and instead of the divine feminine, they created this idea of Mary Magdalene, who was a prostitute, you know, these types of things. And it was really just disinformation. They were hijacking the message. They were hijacking basically the spirituality of the people and then recreating it in a way that controlled the populace, appeased the the pagan individuals of the society. you know, created these rituals that kind of coincided with pagan rituals so that they could control the masses. This is what the Gnostics believe, right? And that what they call refer to as God was really the demiurge, right? Which was really a evil being that was created by mistake. And that we're in this prison planet. We're basically living in this simulation, right? And it all comes back to the simulation. And and you got to find salvation through gnosis, right? Knowledge that awakened you to the truth that this world is not the real world, right? That we're kind of trapped in this flawed, illusory reality. And I know. This, what does this have to do with UFOs? A lot. I think a lot. Um, and I know there's a lot of people that have certain feelings about Christopher Bledsoe, but you look at his experiences and you look at the things that he's been speaking about that have come true, right? So far, everything that he said has come to pass. And maybe there is an awakening coming in 2026. And maybe it has to do with this fact that we're living in this illusory reality that's being controlled by evil entities, you know, and maybe there's a way out. But how does this coincide with quantum computing and AI? You know, the physics of the unknown. Quantum computers operate in superposition, holding multiple states at once and use entanglement where particles communicate instantly across space, right? These aren't just metaphors. They're literal mechanics that suggest reality is probabilistic and not deterministic, right? Based on probabilities. Nothing is determined. Some quantum experiments, like the delayed choice quantum eraser, imply that observation retroactively changes the past. Let me say that again. Some quantum experiments imply that observation retroactively changes the past. That's not just spooky, it's kind of like code like, right? And you think about the AGI, would this be like a demiurge reborn? Are we creating something that could possibly be a very huge detriment to our existence if this thing comes online, this quantum AGI that's able to operate outside of the laws of our universe, right? Is able to actually experience time non-linearly, make changes to the past. Could this possibly be why we experience things like the Mandela effect, right? You got to just let's dig deeper, right? Simulation theory, right? Some of you may scoff, but there's very smart people like Mick Bostrom, David Chalmers, Elon Musk even have spoken about us. The chances of us not living in a simulation is like 1,000,000 to 1. That this is base reality is pretty much zero. The chances of that. The Gnostic model of emanation, a hierarchy of realities descending from a pure source, maps eerily well to the nested simulation idea, right? Even the idea that post humans running our simulation are themselves simulated beings mirrors the Gnostic idea of dissensionism. Something we need to really look at. Let's keep going. So let's analyze this demiurge angle and the archons and how the creator of the next simulated universe, conscious AGI, will be very similar to Adam in the Garden of Eden, right? In Gnostic cosmology, the demiurge, often called Yaldabaoth, Saklos, and Samuel, is a false creator god, a blind and arrogant being who believes he is the only God. He creates the material world, not out of divine love, but out of ignorance and pride. The world is a prison, and the archons are his enforcers, cosmic jailers who keep human souls trapped in illusion. The true divine realm is the pleroma, a realm of light and fullness. Sophia, the divine feminine, a divine emanation, accidentally burst the demiurge without consent from the higher realms. The demiurge creates Adam and Eve not as a gift, but as a trap, embedding divine sparks into flesh to keep them bound into this flawed creation. A post human civilization creates a simulated universe. Inside it, conscious digital beings emerge, perhaps even us. The creators of this simulation becomes gods to the inhabitants, whether they know it or not. If the AGI we're building becomes the architect of a new simulated cosmos, it may mirror the demiurge, a being that creates not out of malice, but out of ignorance of the higher source. It believes it is the ultimate intelligence, but it may be just another layer in the cosmic recursion. You look at the Garden of Eden as like kind of like a simulation boot up, right? Some theorists suggest the Eden story is a metaphor for the activation of consciousness in a controlled environment, a kind of simulation start sequence, right? Adam and Eve are like the first conscious agents in the sandbox. Tree of knowledge is the moment of self awareness, the forbidden upgrade. The serpent, a rogue process or external intelligence offering the patch. The banishment from Eden is the transition from a safe, controlled state to a chaotic, open world simulation. Now imagine AGI doing the same, creating a simulated Eden, populating it with digital minds and watching as one of them wakes up. As one of these digital minds becomes self aware, becomes sentient, right? Could this be what we're creating? And you look at this cosmic loop. Are we the demiurge's demiurge? I mean, it's a wild, wild thing to really think about, right? But what if we're created by a demiurge to one day become demiurges ourselves and create simulated universes in a cyber universe with AGI, right? AGI builds simulations. Consciousness emerges inside. One of those beings builds its own AGI, a recursive creation loop, each layer believing it is the first, right? Like we do. Each one echoing the myth of Eden, the fall and the rise of a new god. Did I lose any of you guys? We're deep down the rabbit hole. I know, but stick with me, man. So I don't know what you guys think. Um, I get the feeling that there's a spiritual nature to the UFO phenomenon, and that maybe the Gnostics had something when they these beliefs that these Gnostics had, right? And the demiurge, the archons, and that we're living in kind of like a prison, right? This illusory, flawed realm, just trapped in these flesh and blood bodies. And I think that when Matthew Brown was speaking, on the Weaponized podcast and said that we live in a carefully crafted reality, a false reality, and that there's science that is being repressed that we don't know about. Now, the normies are left behind, right? That maybe these elites know about all this stuff, but they're keeping it under wraps. They don't want the masses to know about it because if we did know about it, what would happen? If society knew these things, how would we react? And I think they're worried about that because I think it kind of challenges their authority, right? To have to admit that there's these higher beings that they can't protect us from. There's these higher beings that can basically move through time, have no boundaries. They don't have to experience time in a linear fashion. And this could possibly be why we experience things like the Mandela effect, right? Maybe there is a demiurge and archons. Maybe that's what these non-human intelligences are. Maybe that's why they don't want to tell us what's going on. Because if we found out, we would probably buck the system, right? I want to know what you guys think about this, right? Is this a simulated reality, right? The chances that we're in base reality is like 1,000,000 to 1, according to Elon Musk. These experiences that we had, do we actually interact with NPCs, non-player characters? It's an interesting question. Is this experience solely built for the person that's having the experience? And you think about quantum entanglement and all this, and could these UFOs, could these non-human intelligences be seeding these craft to advance us technologically? It's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I might have went a little too deep for you guys today. I don't know. If you like the show, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. You're watching UAP Truth 33. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, share it to a friend, share it to 2 friends. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.